In the last lecture, we added Radium and started using it to change our button and add a pseudo selector, the hover pseudo selector. Now that's of course nice, but we can also use Radium to use media queries. Now I'll do this in the person component. There we have a person class, and we could of course easily add a media query here where we say if the min width is, let's say, 500 pixels, then we override our person class to have a width of 450 pixels and no longer use percentages. We could absolutely do that, but I will comment this solution out because I don't want to use my CSS class. I want to show you how to do it with Radium, which you might need in some occasions if you want to scope it to a component or if you want to change it dynamically. So for that, I'll add a new style. And of course, you can name this constant whatever you want in my function here. And there, I now again will use a special selector, which will look really strange, but which works thanks to Radium. And don't forget to wrap your export with Radium down there, otherwise it won't work. And now you can write your media query here. Media, min length, min width, 500 pixels. And then define the styles as a JavaScript object. This still is a JavaScript property name, and I know this looks super weird, but since it's a string, it's a valid name. And Radium will parse it and of course understand it because it's a media query, and amongst pseudo selectors, it is something Radium understands. Now here we could say that we want to set the width of the element to which we apply the style to 450 pixels. So a fixed width, which is not growing dynamically. And now I want to assign this to my component here, want to assign the style, and I do have my class added, but I now also have my style, which will override my class setting by default CSS rules, not because of Radium. And now we should see the following. If I reload the application, I toggle the persons. Now, as you can see, we now get an error that a plugin requiring add CSS, for example, when using keyframes, or for us important media queries, we need to wrap our application in a style root component. This is a component made available by Radium, and whilst wrapping the export with Radium is enough for pseudo selectors, for basically transforming selectors like media queries or also animations with keyframes, we need to wrap the entire application in a special component provided by Radium. There we can simply import style root from Radium. With this first Radium import here, we're importing the default export of that file, and then we import a named export, style root. And now we can simply wrap our whole application with that. So what we can do is we can simply go here, whoops, not in person, sorry, in the return statement, and simply wrap everything, the whole div with the class name app, into style root like this. Now if we save this and we reload the application, I click this again, now it works without an error. And if I resize this, you see the boxes are only staying in the middle, but they're not growing in width anymore. They are growing in width to 60% of the size though, if I go below my media query threshold, which was 500 pixels. So there, if I go below that threshold, it will basically stick to 60%. If I go above it, it will stay at the fixed width of 450 pixels. Important, wrap your entire application in the root component, only there, with the style root component provided by Radium, so that you can safely access advanced features, to call it like this, like media queries. For pseudo selectors alone, you don't need to do that. Whichever feature you use, you have to wrap a component where you plan on using Radium features like media queries, like pseudo selectors. You have to wrap the export with the Radium function basically, which you import from the Radium package. So using Radium, one way of getting the best of both worlds, scoped styles and advanced CSS features like pseudo selectors and media queries.